Yes!
All right! Hello! Welcome to the unofficial opening night of Texas Frightmare Weekend 2017. Of course, none of this would be possible without our friends at Texas Frightmare, so I want to give them a huge round of applause. How many of you guys are going to Texas Frightmare? None of this will be happening without them. This is our fourth year to partner with them on a big opening night screening, and man, this is one of the best. And of course, our friends at Mondo. Let's give them a huge round of applause. I don't think they're even in here yet. They're still out there selling posters, so that's awesome. Hope you guys all got your thing poster. If not, they will be back in the lobby afterwards. And then, of course, they'll be out at Frightmare. They just debuted all the posters they'll have out there today, and man, there's some amazing ones. We're here celebrating a pretty special occasion. We're here celebrating the 35th anniversary of one of the greatest fucking movies ever made. That is John Carpenter's The Thing. It felt only appropriate that we celebrate the 35th anniversary by showing it to you in 35.
Yes.
So you'll be watching a 35 print of the movie tonight. We're really also celebrating bearded Kurt Russell here tonight because with The Thing and then Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 opening tonight, which I know some of you guys did that unofficial bearded Kurt Russell double feature. That is awesome. It's really interesting because we think of The Thing as it's The Thing. It's just one of the greatest sci-fi horror movies ever made. It wasn't a huge hit when it came out. It actually came out the same weekend as Blade Runner, which is something that I didn't even know. Pretty crazy. It didn't do that well at the box office. It was getting kind of beat by a friendlier Alien movie that had come out a couple of weeks earlier, known by E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Also from the same studio, kind of weird. But here we are, 35 years later, and we're celebrating it as it should be celebrated. So, in an awesome way. So, without further ado, can we get the lights up? There's no sexy way to do this, guys, so we're just gonna bring them on. It's just gonna be like that. It's gonna be like a light. Nope, there we go. Told you. All right, can we get the spotlight off? Because I feel like the guy on the poster right now. All right, let's bring up our special guest here. Mr. Dean Cundey, Mr. Thomas Waits, and Mr. Wilford Brimley.
Yeah!
Windows. It's the movie that really brought Windows and Mac together, guys. All right. So I'll kind of get this started, and then we'll kick it over to you guys. Dean, I mean, you shot you worked hand in hand with Carpenter on all of his films, really. I mean, most of them, Halloween, Big Trouble in Little China, Escape from New York, The Fog. But this one has some of the most insane shots, I think, out of all your collaborations. What do you feel like as a cinematographer was just the craziest shot in the whole movie?
Whoa, that's a tough one because it was so full of interesting new things. It was the first major studio film that John and I worked on. So we had a lot bigger canvas on which to paint, bigger sets, locations, all of that stuff. So it was very challenging from that standpoint. But also Rob Bottin's stuff was just remarkable.
Absolutely, yeah. He was 22 years old. We were talking about Rob, who did the effects, which are, this movie is one of the all-time greatest practical effects movies. Just incredible.
Yeah, so Rob and I collaborated very closely with how to shoot the stuff, how to get it to move. the lighting, it was all very meticulously done. It wasn't just like throw light on it. It was painting little areas with light and hiding other areas. So the whole thing was really a great challenge. And as you point out, practical effects, which they've now invented the computer.
Yeah, it's not just for playing chess anymore, right?
They were just telling me this the other day. And so the stuff they can do with the computer is so huge, and sometimes so over the top that I look very proudly at the thing as being part of a movie that relied on practical effects, and everything you see, everything that moved and split open and all of that stuff was just amazing.
Yeah, it's absolutely, Let's do a round of applause for that. It's absolutely, still to this day, it's one of those benchmark movies for practical effects, and still one that people use as an example of why practical effects should still have a place in movie making. Thomas and Wilford, with having you guys here, I have to ask, Wilford, how fun was it for you to go crazy with an axe in that room? And Thomas, how terrifying was it for you to have Wilford going crazy with an axe in that room?
Test check, test. It was, I remember it being really exciting on the set. I think it was one of our first days where we got to let our hair down, and I was an actor from New York. And I was working with Will, and, John created such a fun atmosphere on the set. I think I remember it being very exciting that day. Yeah. Because I had a date that night. And it was really funny because we were all on Universal's lot, and this gorgeous woman walks by, and it was all guys in the thing, as you know, and they were like, Tom, go for it. And they made a bet to see if I could get this girl to, well, she became a famous TV writer, as I remember. Anyway, I ran up to this stunning woman with my heart pounding in my ears, and I said, my name's Tom, would you go out to dinner with me today? And they're all laughing at me, and she said yes. And so after we shot that scene, I remember I lost my voice from screaming. And
Wilford Brimley going crazy with an axe. Yeah.
So that's how I remember. It was my first date in LA. That's how I remember. But it was a lot of fun. That's how I remember.
You know how much we paid her? All of us chipping in.
And what about you, Wilford? Speaking of practical effects, you have one of the best kind of interactions of practical effects in the movie with your kind of autopsy scene, and I've heard, as the rumor goes, that all the other guys were so grossed out, but you just weren't grossed out at all by your autopsy scene. The autopsy scene that you had to perform.
Where you were looking at the dead body and you saw the thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, you saw it, huh? I don't get it.
Well, I'm just going to cross
See,
off.
movie The Thing, I come away from there with some great friendships. Tommy's a good friend, been a good friend for 30-some years. The advent of that kind of, special effects, I wasn't all in favor of that. I'm still not. When I was a kid, I used to go to scary movies, and I got, as an audience participant, I got to create in my own mind what it was that scared me. Now you make a movie, call it E.T., and show me a little rubber doll that looks like a fishing worm, and I don't like that. This movie here was important in certain ways. It was a landmark as far as the special effects You know, most kids when they're 18, 19 years old go to sleep at night and dream of pretty girls. This Rob Boutin dreamed of slimy dogs. I don't get that, but there you go.
This is gonna be really fun. Dean, I want to talk about the now iconic opening title sequence. You know, even that was shot practically, and that's something that obviously now has been homaged in so many things and recreated. But you guys shot that practically, and still to this day, it's just one of the most iconic title sequences. So I'd love to talk about how you guys shot that. It's a pretty fun story.
Well, it was a big studio film. Most of the time with low budgets, you were working in LA. Maybe you'd get to go out of state or something. But when they said, "Well, we're going to Alaska to shoot the opening sequence, and we're going to essentially Canada, British Columbia, on the Alaskan border," and it was an amazing experience. I mean, for a lot of the helicopter flying stuff, we were literally a half hour out of Juneau by helicopter to this absolutely remote glacier research camp, which was what the story was about. So we started off experiencing what that whole environment was like. And then when they built the set up in Stewart, British Columbia, it was the same kind of thing. To get there, we lived in a remote little town, Stewart, and there was a bus ride that would go up for anywhere from a half hour to an hour in the morning. We were remote, so we really were experiencing that whole environment that the story was about. So I think it added quite a bit, because everywhere we looked were these vast vistas of snow, remoteness, but not just, remote view somewhere with the snow in the mountain, and the ski resort was over here.
Yeah.
It was, in fact, out in the middle of nowhere. So I think that really helped us a lot to portray what was coming.
Yeah. Did you shoot any of the actual the thing title sequence at all?
You mean the flying saucer?
No,
Yeah,
with
I was holding the camera in space.
No, with the logo, the way you guys shot it with the smoke and the fish tank.
No, that was done by the title specialists.
Oh, okay.
But all of the rest of it was very, very real and vivid for us.
Yeah, and I mean you're a legend. We kind of have a legend in our presence. Obviously, amongst shooting all the things that you've shot with Carpenter, you've also worked with Spielberg. You shot Jurassic Park. You worked with Zemeckis. You shot all 3 Back to the Future films, which is really making me nerd out right now.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, amongst other things, I mean, you are responsible for really portraying the images of a lot of our childhoods. I mean, what do you kind of learn throughout your career of working with Carpenter and Spielberg and Zemeckis and all these guys? Because I mean, I feel like in the same way that Drew Struzan for this beautiful poster is an unsung hero, that you're an unsung hero as well. The cinematographers don't get the credit that they deserve, quite like the directors or the actors. So what's your experience been like? I mean, working with all those guys and shooting those amazing movies.
Well, I've been lucky. I started off doing low-budget movies, action films. I describe them as girls in bikinis with machine guns, and then something blows up. And the directors I worked with were guys who sort of thought of the camera as a device to record actors talking and cars exploding. And Carpenter was the first one who wanted to use the camera to tell the story, and I was so extremely excited by that, because that's what I wanted to do. And I've been fortunate to work with directors who who recognize the fact that it's visual storytelling. You know, the first 80% of what we as our brain perceives on a screen is the visual. We also hear the sound. We hear the actors talking and talking and talking. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you guys there. But you know, so it's visual, and that's what compelled me to get into the business, and why I'm so pleased with having worked with, you know, so many directors that also were interested in telling the story, you know. And I you know, I mentioned the fact that 80% of the movie is, you know, visual. I challenge people, I challenge you all to go home, take out one of your favorite movies, put it in, turn off the sound, and do you know what the story is about just from the camera work and the visuals and so forth? That's what successful storytelling is about. And yeah, so go do that. Not now.
And I bet if you go home and you put in your favorite movie and you look at the cinematographer and it was this man. Let's kick it out to you guys. I'm sure you have a lot of great questions. Who wants to be the first? No pressure. Yes, right here.
Ready?
Yeah.
It's a question for Dean. So, aside from you being one of my favorite cinematographers, I'm also a big fan of Roger Deakins. And just from what you said about, you know, taking, let the images tell the story. And the great thing I love about your work in the thing is that Antarctica became its own character, just the wilderness. And there's a lot of cinematographers out there that kind of placate the landscape that it becomes its own character. But really, I'm kind of getting long-winded here. Who's your favorite cinematographer other than yourself?
Good question. Who's my favorite? Well, I would have to agree, Roger Deakins. I mean, and he has a very similar kind of philosophy, which is he doesn't want to be seen. You know, and it's the same. My feeling is that not to impose my, you know, look or something on it. It has to speak to the audience just from the visuals, and you know, I think that's an important aspect. Roger Deakins does that. You know, you're really not aware of him other than the fact that you're just, you know, sucked up into the visuals. So he's certainly one of the contemporaries. My early influence was Conrad Hall. When I was going to UCLA Film School, I watched his movies avidly because he was really very, very good at painting with light and using the camera.
Awesome. All right, next question. Any question? Are we good? Anywhere? Yes, right here.
For Mr. Brimley, did you enjoy movies or commercials better?
Do I enjoy movies or commercials better? Has a lot to do with which pays the most. I have to say something about the man and his camera. The camera is an inanimate object that only does one thing. It takes a picture of what you pointed at, and what it takes a picture of is always the truth. So if you're out there spoofing or pretending, you get caught with your pants down, because the camera don't care how you feel that day. Camera takes a picture of what it sees, and I appreciate that about it. I did commercials for the Quaker Oats Company and Liberty Medical, and I did a couple of movies too, so it's a toss-up, pal. I don't know what to tell you.
I feel like somebody wants to ask you what your favorite oatmeal is, but everyone's too afraid. Yeah. All right. Next question. Yeah, right here.
The style of carpentry like the visual style is very different from what you did in Back to the Future. So when you collaborated with him, how did that kind of come about? Because it's very, like you see a Carpenter movie, you know it's a Carpenter movie because I think a lot of it has to do with the way it's filmed. How did that collaboration happen?
Can you hear in the background, or shall I repeat the? I'll just repeat how. He observes that there's a different visual style between Carpenter movies and Zemeckis movies and so forth, and and that's always been one of my sort of feelings, is that it's not up to me to impose a style on a film. It's not up to me to say, oh, I'm going to show who I am or what I can do. I always let the film sort of speak to me, and the director, and all of the things that are in front of the camera, as Wilford so wisely points out, that you are there to capture all of that stuff in a way that tells the story. And I think John's stories, are very particularly his kind of storytelling, and Zemeckis has a different style of story, and those films always sort of talk to you, and they sort of dictate what the look is going to be, because you react to so much of what you see out there, the backgrounds, the story, the performances, all of that. So it always varies according to what I feel is the best way to portray a particular story.
Yeah, right here.
For Tom, was John really strict with sticking to the script, or did he allow you guys to go off and do your own thing sometimes?
He let us improvise. We had 2 weeks of rehearsal, which was a real luxury, and that happens very rarely today because of the cost of making movies. But because John enabled the actors to get together for 2 weeks, it was very exciting, and I think it shows in the movie, the ensemble that was created between the guys, because we were hanging out together. We would go out after work and get to know each other, and many of us are still, like Will said, friends today. John would, as long as the essence of the scene was there, he would give you permission, but you had to always, he leaves actors alone. He just leaves you alone. He just lets you find it, and when you find it, he lets you know. But I don't think you could, all of a sudden start reciting Shakespeare and expect him to go along with that. Although I do think he appreciates Shakespeare. John was a lot of fun to work with.
Did you say why?
So the answer to your question was he gave us the freedom, but he would bring us back to the essence of the scene. Yeah.
Wilford's never done Shakespeare, and I have a feeling he's never going to do it. Yes, right here.
For Wilford, what was it like working on the Ewok movies? I mean, Star Wars fan.
Oh, you were the one who asked. It is May the 4th be with you, Star Wars Day.
All those little guys. Did you ever see the movie? What the hell's it? Somewhere over the
Wizard of Oz.
All them little guys and girls, they were all in that movie. All those kids and the ladies and their mother and father and grandfather, they were all in that movie.
In case you didn't know the question, it was about Ewok Battle for Endor, and we just found out all the Ewoks in that movie were also members of the Lollipop Guild in Wizard of Oz.
I gotta say something about John Carpenter. John Carpenter was one of the few directors, and I've been around a lot of them, and some of them are really wonderful and some of them aren't. John Carpenter, he got it, as far as I'm concerned. That's one of the toughest things to come up with when you're making movies is a good director who gets it. A lot of them confuse the term director and conductor. He didn't. It's always been my opinion that the job of a director is to be the first audience, to watch the work, and if there's something going on that's false or unnecessary or needs to be talked about, you sit down with the people to talk about it, and together you find out how to fix that, and then you get this guy to take a picture of that. So many of them are arbitrary. So many of them will say, now, when you come in the room and your left foot hits the ground, look over your right shoulder and fart. See, that's not film direction. That's silliness. But there's lots of them doing it. John Carpenter is not one of them. I think he's, in my limited field of experience, he's certainly one of my favorites. He's up there with Barry Levinson and Richard Pierce and those kind of guys. I think he's a marvelous director and a gifted man and a friend.
I don't think anyone in this room disagrees with you at all. Yes, right here on the, yes.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I mean, The Thing is a remake. It's a great remake. But there are so many films now being remade or rebooted or what have you. You read about people they're going to redo Big Trouble in Little China or Escape from New York. Given that you guys did a great remake, how do you feel about all this kind of like reboot, remake mania?
And the fact that there's a very bad remake of The Thing as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Which was a prequel, but
I haven't seen it.
yeah.
Smart choice.
Well, I have to say, I think a lot of the remakes are done because there's a lack of imagination, and they say, whoa, what was a big popular movie? Okay, well now we can't make it exactly the same. We have to make it somehow different, but they don't know how to make it different or more interesting or more compelling or whatever. So I'm saddened to see that happen so often, and it's kind of a lesson in that making a film it requires a very particular kind of skill and insight and artistry and so forth to know how to tell a story that an audience is dying to see. And a lot of the early films, you go back all the way to the early films in the 30s and 40s. Why did people want to go see them? They were great stories with compelling characters that related to the time. And now there's sort of a mechanical, aspect because the guys who greenlight the movies are not really storytellers. They're executives in studios and stuff. So I'm saddened to see that, and I always wonder, why do you remake a movie that was good if you can't do it better? Why do you just remake a good movie thinking people are going to automatically go see it? So don't ruin good movies. I was dismayed to hear about Big Trouble in Little China.
Amen.
It was sort of like, why would you? Why not invent something new?
I think it has to do with the mentality of the people who make those movies.
Exactly.
I think they sit around in rooms, and most of them are 19, 20-year-old kids. See, you see a movie now today, and the first thing you see is produced by, and then you see the same thing 23 times. Executive produced by, associate produced by, produced by. What did they produce? So there's a lot of confusion going in, and they don't know what to do. somebody said, here, take this money, and I am so disappointed with a lot of the films that are made today. On the other side of that nickel, I think some of the most wonderful films that ever came down the pike are being made today. There's a movie right now called Fences with Denzel Washington. I think it's a marvelous example of what can be done with a story about life on life's own terms. I think there's a film about a bunch of black ladies that are solving pretty serious problems for the War Department. And I think that's a marvelous film. And then you got the other stuff, you know, the shit.
I swear to God, if they ever try and remake Back to the Future, I'm probably just gonna give up. It's the unremakeable film, and I feel like a lot of the films you've worked on, I mean, some of them they've tried to remake. We're getting another Halloween remake. This one I have hopes for with David Gordon Green, who's actually from the neighborhood right behind the theater. He's a Richardson native, but Big Trouble in Little China, it's so perfect and it's so of the era that it came from, and obviously Back to the Future is one of those movies that it just exists on its own. You can't recapture that, and I think it's obviously there's something about built-in audiences and things like that, but it's like trying to catch lightning in a bottle. I mean.
Well, and one of the things I find interesting is they say, well, we've got to remake these movies for today's audience. And yet, how many people are still watching and loving the original Back to the Future? It is for today's audience.
Absolutely, yeah.
Why would you say, oh, we're going to update it or make it cooler and hipper? No, people still relate to it.
Yeah.
They identify completely to it. So,
What are you gonna have? Like a millennial Marty McFly going back in time in like a Prius? Like it worked because Marty McFly, 1985 Marty McFly, went back to the 50s. If you had 2017 Marty McFly, he would go back to the 90s? Like, that's not, there's no separation there. I mean, it works because, but you guys, in a movie that is very of the time period that it's from, it's so timeless, which is, you know, a little bit ironic about a time travel movie, but yeah, I mean, you know, I'll probably quit my job if that happens. All right, right up top.
Ennio Morricone, the film, wonderful film soundtrack for this film. Like John Carpenter and Ennio Morricone. Do you guys have any interaction with the soundtrack? And what are your favorite songs?
Yeah, this was one of the few movies that John didn't score himself. Maroney very famously scored it.
well, it was interesting because I know John really loved Morricone's work, and he decided it was going to be great because he loved spaghetti westerns. He wanted to make one himself at one point. And so he loved Ennio Morricone's work, and so he asked him to score it. I know that John went back in and tweaked it a little bit and did a few more cues himself to Carpenterize it, but I think it was the fact that he so much appreciated Morricone's work, which is, you know, if you listen to it, it's yes, there's some melodies, some themes, but he's so much about creating mood and style, and John really liked that.
Wilford, what's your favorite song? Good to meet.
Do you have a favorite song from the score? Did you listen to the score?
Or favorite song in general?
Oh, just favorite song in life? He's asking what your favorite song is.
I got a lot of favorite songs. I love music. I guess.
Would you sing one?
Yeah. Sure, I will. Right after my hunchback brother straightens up. I guess my favorite song would be a song written by Jerome Kern and And the other guy called The Folks Who Live on the Hill. I guess that's my favorite song. Okay.
All right. Yeah. All right, let's go back to the top.
Yeah, I just got a question for Dean. Being that so many of us in here are big fans of shot, big fans of the cinematography couple stuff in general, I just wanted to ask you, on a double bill here, what is your favorite film of your own that you have shot, or maybe your favorite work that you've done on film? And what was the most challenging? Or maybe the same.
Yeah, those are good questions.
Well, you know, it's really, it's always hard for me to pick one. A lot of people say, what's your favorite movie? I generally point to three, Jurassic Park, Back to the Futures, and Roger Rabbit, because they were films that allowed me to go out and do new stuff and invent new techniques and so forth. But I do look with a great deal of favor to The Thing, because it was one of the most challenging, physically, you know, aesthetically, and you know, so trying to pick one is impossible. But I would call those my four favorites for the challenge and the accomplishment that I was done. I like to say I did it all myself. I didn't. You didn't hear it in this room, right? I actually had some help with crew and creative people and that director guy.
Yeah.
Could I say something? You know, I asked John that question once. John Carpenter came to my acting class. I'm an acting teacher, and he came to my class, and one of the students said to him, because I think Starman is a great film by
Absolutely.
John
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeff
So good.
Oh my God! And back then, John used to smoke. I hope he doesn't smoke anymore. But this
Yeah, he does.
This woman said, "What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite movie?" And he went. The one I did with him, and he pointed to me. So I think that was his favorite movie. Isn't that cool?
Yeah. It kind of brings up an interesting thing. You know, we're talking about Thing being such a benchmark for practical effects, but I mean, another benchmark for effects is Jurassic Park, and really introducing this transition from practical effects into the age of digital, and still to this day, Jurassic Park holds up when there's movies that were released 2 weeks ago that don't hold up anymore. You know what I mean? You still to this day can watch Jurassic Park, and the effects are so amazing because it's this perfect blend of practical and digital, and knowing when to use practical and when to use digital, and using them as tools and not crutches. And so just being in that transition period as a cinematographer, what was that like? How was that approach different for you? Because a lot of, you guys were kind of just thrown into it. You were figuring it out as you went with this kind of new emerging technology, and you're shooting these dinosaurs that aren't there. But it's just such an amazing film, but it's really an amazing looking film. So I love it.
Oh, well, thank you. But yeah, Jurassic was the first time anybody created a photorealistic creature in a computer. We hadn't even heard of that until a production meeting we were having, and Stephen and about 6 or 8 of us going through storyboards and so forth. And they originally were going to do the dinosaurs as stop motion, little rubber ones that had been done since, well, King Kong certainly.
Yeah.
And one day, Dennis Murin from Industrial Light and Magic came to the production meeting and said, Stephen, we can do these things in the computer, we think. And he said, really, show me. And he said, well, we don't have it. We haven't done it yet. And over a period of about 3 or 4 weeks, he started to bring us very interesting, crude examples of how the computer was going to be used to create these creatures. The animation was amazing because it It was more subtle, it had more weight, it had more feeling. So as a result of that, we just said, okay, we're going to do it. And I think we paid close attention. Part of it was the fact that, and that was one of the things I appreciate about some of these films I've worked on, is that we had to pay close attention. It wasn't sort of like now, where they say, okay, and then the building is going to blow up and they're going to do some stuff. All right, let's go over here and we'll shoot the car wreck. And you assume that they're going to do that, and then those guys go off and they do that. And, a lot of them work in their mother's basement. And that's a nerd joke. And because they do it and they overdo it, and they violate the rules of physics, and we can all feel it because the building really wouldn't crumble that fast, or any other things like that. I think because we were inventing it, we paid really, really close attention to what we were doing and how it was going to be done, and blending the rubber dinosaurs with the digital ones, which we never saw until we were easily halfway through the movie, until we saw the very first dinosaur. But it was the fact that we were all completely dedicated to it. I think that made the difference.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And like I said, to this day, just still one of those films that looks better than, like a huge percentage of movies that are coming out.
Well, and I'm very pleased and sort of proud of the fact that people say, hey, it doesn't look old. It holds up, and even with a critical eye, you can watch and say, oh, well, there's no matte lines and edges and funny looking lighting and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I think you brought some Carpenter sensibilities to Jurassic Park. Definitely the opening sequence with the kind of backlit silhouettes, and then definitely the shot with the kind of computer screen reflection on the raptor. Like there's some Carpenter-esque moments in Jurassic Park for sure. It's the thing. It's
I think that's part of what I appreciate about my journey, is the fact that I've been able to do something and then draw on that and add it to the next, and it was received by the directors who said, oh, okay, well, we'll trust you if you think you can do that.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll wrap this up soon. Thomas, do you have, there's so many great versions of the thing. Wilford turns into maybe the best version, which is just that kind of Voltron Megazord version of all the different aliens, and then of course we have the spider thing, which is maybe one of the most iconic. But do you have a favorite? You don't get to turn into an alien; you just get jumped on. But do you guys have a favorite version of the thing in the movie, or a favorite death maybe?
My own.
Yeah.
I like the death scene.
Yeah.
That was really intense that day. And I did my own stunt, and it was really good. I think it comes out really well. It looks like a guy's getting
Yeah. You play a really good ragdoll. Yeah.
That'd be the call I'm waiting for.
Uh-oh.
See if they have a cameraman yet.
Who's calling you this late? And what is that phone? You can answer it if you want. No?
Answer it, I'll call him.
All right. Dean, do you obviously you approach all of those, creatures from a cinematographer standpoint, but you seem like, you're a movie nerd. So is there one kind of in particular that was your favorite kind of death or your favorite kind of creature to shoot? The spider one's super cool.
Yeah, I think that sequence was one of my favorites, because there was so much variety of technique that we had to do. But some of the transformational stuff was, where the dog transforms in the kennel and things like that. Rob was really pulling out all these new techniques, and we even tried to invent a camera to vary the speed so the thing would, move rapidly and then in slow motion and then rapidly, and it was the idea was way beyond the technology. We couldn't do it. So you could do it now with a computer, but in those days we were reaching for stuff that we couldn't do, and I think that's part of the fun and satisfaction of it.
Absolutely. I mean, nowadays you watch a movie and you look and there's no magic trick to it. There's no mystery. You know, okay, they created that in a computer, but I always go back to the thing in one of those movies where I watch it, and I'm still to this day trying to figure out how you guys did some of that stuff. So absolutely, yeah, I 100% agree with you. What about you, Wilford? Did you have a favorite, was there a favorite version of the thing in the movie? In the many forms it took?
35 years ago, right?
Can you remember him? Yeah.
I had a great time making that movie. The thing I remember the most, I had a scene to do where I grabbed this guy by the face and my fingers sank in his face.
Yep. Yeah.
Right? Did that happen?
That happened. That definitely happened. Yeah.
I'm probably the wrong guy to be here.
You're 100% the right guy to be here. We are so happy and honored to have you here and all you guys here.
I love movies. The ones I like are about folks who are doing the best they can to deal with life on life's terms. I've never been a big time science fiction guy. So when I'm asked about this movie, and I have been asked a lot about it, especially here lately, I have to say I enjoyed the experience immensely. I came away from there with a good friend in John Carpenter, and I came away from there with a respect for him that I didn't know I was going to wind up with, because face it, we're making a movie about slimy rubber dogs. Who gives a shit about that? You do.
We do.
There you go.
We do.
There you go. All right. Anyway, I think
You should have
it's
seen
wonderful that you love it like you do.
Right.
And I want to personally thank each and every one of you for allowing me to make a living all these years doing something I really like to do.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, sir. Thank you, all you guys. I think that's the perfect time to end it. That's really the perfect note to end it on. So, are you guys ready to watch a movie about a rubber worm dog? Are you ready to watch a movie about guys living life on life's terms? All right. Well, is there anything you guys would like to say personally before we show these people the 35mm 35th anniversary?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing, you guys. You know, when you do a long movie like that, like when your contract is up, when you're finished, the first AD announces, ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Thomas G. Waits. This is his last day, and people clap. But when it was Will's last day on the job, Larry Franco, great guy, great first AD, said, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to announce that this is Wilford Brimley's last day on the set. Let's give him a round of applause. Everyone stopped work and stood up and clapped. So,
oh, wow.
Let's hear it for Will Brimley.
Yeah, that's cool.